everyone, this is Catherine O'Connell and welcome to Lawyer on Air. If you are looking for inspirational stories about women in law, then this is the podcast for you. Join me and my lawyer ladies as we enjoy a glass of wine after a hard day at work and talk about the world of women in law. It's my passion to share stories of amazing legal ladies who are working as in-house legal counsel, who have law firm roles, who are leading on boards, and who are doing law differently. From time to time, I will also invite special guests on the show to share their insights on legal recruiting and tips for getting hired as a successful lawyer in Japan. I hope you will enjoy getting to know these amazing women who I am so proud to share a profession with. I'm glad you're here and I hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Lawyer on Air podcast. I'm the special host for the show today, Jane Nakata, the producer and manager of Lawyer on Air. Today my special guest is Catherine herself. I'm really looking forward to showing you a side of Catherine that potentially you don't see when you see all of her wonderful branding and marketing out there, or you listen to the podcast, which, we spend a lot of time and effort to make it sound really good so that you can enjoy listening to it. So today you're going to hear from Catherine and hear about some of the things that have helped her to get to where she is today. And I'm sure you've noticed, yes, she is now going to have 2 board positions coming up soon in the summer once that other one passes through the shareholders vote. And she said to me recently, a lot of people come up to her and say, wow, you're doing all these things, it's amazing. And she sort of thought, wow, they don't know the things that have happened for me to get to this place. So we talk about those things today in this episode. So if you want to hear more about some of the challenges that have come across Catherine's path and also how she got through them, some of the strategies or things that were useful for her to get to where she is today. So I hope you will enjoy this episode with Catherine O'Connell. Hello, Catherine, and welcome to Lawyer on Air. Thank you for being my special guest today.
Well, thank you so much, Jane. I'm feeling a little nervous, just like my guests probably do, with the microphone turned around towards me this time.
Yeah, right. You're going to be on the receiving end of the questions today. That's okay. I'm sure you're used to this. And we're just talking about you and your life so far. So I'm sure we will be fine. So if we were meeting in person today, where would we be and what would you be ordering from the menu?
Oh, good question. I love this question. This always tells me so much about my guests, but I've got 2 answers because I'm going to take liberty. The first is, if I was drinking wine, I'd head on down to Apero. Apero was introduced to me by Angela Krantz, who was my very first guest on the podcast. The people there are lovely, and I'd probably be ordering a champagne. Because I recently had a champagne there called a winter champagne because it was in wintertime. It was awesome. But if I was going to be taking the other end of day, where it's a little bit earlier, perhaps afternoon, I'd go down to the National Arts Centre in Tokyo. It's really close to me in Nogizaka. And there's a cafe, Salon de la Ronde, I think, the round salon. And they just serve pretty ordinary sandwiches and cakes and coffees and things. But it's the place. It's inside this museum and it's beautiful. Wow. And it sort of it's featured in anime, I believe, and other things like that. It's on top of this inverted cone and it's round. And it's just awesome for the view and for the atmosphere of being there. So I'd head on down there and probably get an espresso because black coffee is so good for you, keeps you in health, keeps your mind alert. I'm such a converted person to black coffee. So probably have an espresso.
Wow. Do they have flat whites there? Because I do like a flat white.
They have lattes. I'm afraid they don't have flat whites. Or have to.
Well, I'll have one of those probably. And I would definitely join you for a champagne at Apero. That sounds delicious. Champagne being my favorite drink, everybody, just in case you were wondering.
Mine too now. I can't take flat wine as well. So I'm a bubbly person now.
Yeah. Well, so here we are. We have recorded how many episodes? Nearly 50 episodes.
Nearly 50, Jane.
Lawyer on Air. 2 years. Goodness me, what a lot has happened. And it's been more than a year since we checked in with you to see what's happening or your learnings, your thoughts and things. So we thought it would be a great time in the season 5 to do another episode with Catherine as the guest. So here I am, special host for this episode. So catch us up. What's been happening? Anything you want to share in particular that you're excited about?
Oh, it's just going to be an awesome year, this 2023. And yes, you're right. Nearly 50 episodes. Going from 2018, when I first talked to you about launching a podcast, I had no idea that I'd actually do it, number one. And number two, that it would be so magical and enriching and nourishing for me as well as the guests. So I'm really proud of achieving that milestone of having people say yes to me, trust me, come on the show. And
Yep.
I often get this feedback that people didn't realize how great it was going to be to reflect on their life and what they've done, where they've come from. So that's been really great to hear. Going forward, continuing season 6, 7, let's see where it goes.
Yep.
I've got some other things up my sleeve, but I think 2023, it's awesome because I'll take on another board role this year, pending what happens in June, of course, with voters voting. But I have to stand back and really think about the fact that I've nearly got this role with Toyota, and it's humbling at the same time as being a real place where I can draw a line in the sand and say, you did it, and that you can do things that you never thought were possible.
Yeah.
And I'd really like others to know that that is possible.
Yeah. So, people who are coming across you in the last year or so might look and think, oh, wow, look at Catherine. There's no glass ceiling for her. There's no challenges. She just sort of mows everything down and does whatever she wants. But they haven't seen what we just calculated as nearly 30 years of legal career and things happening in the background that they haven't seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's true. It comes up quite a bit these days that people view me in the Catherine mold that I am now. And that's great. I'm glad that they see that. But also, I wasn't only, I'm 56 now. I wasn't 56 for 30 years. I was, much younger. I was 26. I was 16. I was 36. So I was all those years coming up. And yes, I've had my challenges, and I haven't spoken a lot about those. But I think one of the ones that's come up recently for me was since I've been doing a storytelling workshop the last 5 or 6 weeks, getting up at 4:30 in the morning for 5 o'clock calls with this cohort. And a lot of things come out there with people's vulnerabilities and challenges they've gone through life. Because the whole point of telling a story is that there's a challenge and you overcome it.
Yeah, that's not a great story if there's no challenge.
No,
right?
And you approach the world differently. So I think one of the worst things that ever happened to me was when a boss told me I wasn't a leader and I was not strategic, and that perhaps there might be a better place to go and find that place where I could be doing other things. And that was quite a hard thing to learn from somebody, and have someone who is your boss tell you this sort of thing. And so
and to just leave, not like I'm going to help you be more strategic or become a leader. You should just not be here.
Actually, yes, that's right. Yeah. And so I think I wasn't a very good supervisor for direct reports, for example. I think I made many mistakes. And through coaching, through sort of analyzing myself internally, being very frank with myself and working on it, I think I've now been able to sort of become a better leader. I do have more strategic approach to the way I do things. But the thing is, I didn't let it define me at that time. Although actually, if I'm honest, it did define me for a while. I thought I was no good, that I was not a leader, that I couldn't be strategic, and it boxed me in and hurt me for a long time. But I think along the way, working on myself, I've got to a point where I'm a better leader and I can be strategic. So I just wanted people to know that, when you look at me, you are seeing someone who has gone through plenty of challenges, and that's just the tip of the iceberg to tell you those things that I haven't actually said openly to other people before now. And that's quite hard to say. But if you ask others, you'll find that everybody has had challenges similar. and that we are actually all connected through this thread of humanness, that we've all had hard times, different times, but actually quite similar. When I shared this story with the other potential storytellers in the cohort, 3 or 4 wrote to me and told me they'd had exactly the same thing happened. And you have no idea how comforting that was, that I wasn't alone, that we aren't an island, and that things come across our path that do challenge us. And the point is not to let it define you, to overcome the challenge and go forward and do other things. So it can be a stimulus to change and do something else about it. You can leave it. It's information. You can do what you wish with it. But for me, it really bothered me for a long time and dragged me down. And I did think I couldn't be anything else in this world, that I could never be a leader or someone who was so-called strategic, whatever that means.
Yeah, right.
But here we are. I mean, maybe doing a podcast is a strategy. Leading people to speak and tell their stories, unlock their wisdom, is also a leader in some way. And so there's different ways to define leader and strategist. And I think in that boss's mind, he had his way of defining what it was. And that's fine. I wasn't the fit for him, a round and a square perhaps. So those were hard times.
Yeah.
Jane, they were really hard times, but they've brought me to where I think I am today. And so I want people listening to know that you will be going through challenges as well, but the people who are just ahead of you or 10, 15 years ahead of you have also gone through something to be where they are. I guarantee you that no one can be in the position they are and fighting fit without having had a very sick time at some point where they didn't think they were very good. Yeah.
I think that would be a very rare case if it was all, roses and,
It may look like that. It may look like that, but generally speaking, they've walked through a lot of weeds to get to the roses. Yeah.
So now that you have this wisdom, 10, 15, 20 years on from that time where you were told you're not a leader and you're not good, you can never be a strategist or a strategic, what would you say if you could go back to that Catherine and say and just take her aside and be a mentor or a guide for her now? What would you say to her?
Oh, yes, that's a really great question. I think I'd say that it's one person's view of you, and perhaps part of it is true. Maybe you're not a very good leader at that particular moment. Maybe you're not really good leading people who are your, subordinates or your direct reports, whatever's the PC way to say that. And maybe there should have been more feedback to those people to make them come along with you, right? So maybe it was, the person that you were then was not a really good fit for that role, but didn't mean that leader is one definition and that strategist is one definition. So pull your socks up and get going, because find another way, Catherine, to be a leader. If you want to be a leader, do you want to be a leader? You do. Find another way. What does strategy mean to you? What do you think he meant when he said that, and how could you do it in a different way? I would have loved someone to be there and tell me that, and I wish my older self could have turned back and tell myself that. But that's what I'd probably say, is that there's many ways to be a leader. There's many ways to strategize, and you can do it if that's what you want to do. If you want to be a leader, if you want to be someone who strategizes for others, how are you going to do that? What's coming up for you, Catherine? How are you going to do it?
So were you missing any kind of sort of mentor at that time, or did you have anyone at that time you could have gone to if you had had the thought? You didn't.
I don't think I did, because I was so embarrassed about being told that, and that it was really a point in time where that led to me leaving that company because of those things that were said. And so it was hard to find a mentor or someone to really confide in. I did find a friend who I did say, this has happened, can you help me? And lo and behold, that person did actually say to me, thank God you are telling me this, because you don't deserve to be there. In fact, they don't deserve to have you. I think they meant there's other things that you can be doing, and it's not the best place for you. And they had already seen that in me, but I hadn't quite seen it. And so sometimes you realize it in yourself, others might tell you, but sometimes it takes someone to tell you. So Yes, I don't know if I'd call that person a mentor, but I call it someone who was a lifesaver and a real angel. And so that person's still in my life now and is a very big supporter.
Wow.
So I turned to her and she helped me exit with a great package. You know, she even brought in an HR person to help me. And so
Oh
I
my
felt
goodness.
empowered after
Wow.
feeling I had lost all my power and my strength. So I thank that person. I know they know who they are and who they, if they listen to this, they will absolutely know who they are. And I wouldn't call it mentor. I would call it the person, the knightiest and shining
Lifesaver. Not a
white on a
lightsaber, a
whiteboard.
lifesaver.
Lifesaver, absolute lifesaver.
Yeah,
And
when you needed it. Yeah.
knew that that was where I shouldn't have been. And it just took
Mm.
someone else to tell me and realize that I was the one with the power to be able to leave on my own terms. So that was great. Now I look back, I just smile and think, thank you for the gift from that person who told me that. Otherwise, God knows where I would have ended up. But I certainly was not in the right place.
There you go.
And
That's the
it
learning.
took a bit
Yeah.
of a a push to be moving out of somewhere where it wasn't good. So that would be my thing to tell others, is that don't force it. You might be in the wrong place, and sometimes it's actually better to leave where you are and start something else.
That's
Yeah.
interesting what you just, that story that you've just told us. We hear that a lot from all of the guests across Lawyer on Air, but also people who we've worked with on our retreats. This not talking to people about what's going on and trying to figure it all out yourself seems like a
Yeah.
real common sort of thing, isn't it? I don't want to say a problem, but
I think it is. And we're not an island. We do need to talk to others. And I think it's because we're so geared up as lawyers to be a certain type, to be a certain level, to be a certain impression that you create around town, to be that person who's bold and who's strong and who can do anything because you're a lawyer. But actually, we're just humans and we have a whole lot of things that don't go quite right for us, and we're not perfect. And so when something does go wrong, it doesn't go so well for us, we really need to open up and talk to others. It's never as bad as we think. Honestly, it's never as bad as we think.
right.
It feels really hard in the moment. And by God, it was hard for me. I was so embarrassed and so upset and thought I'd be turfed out of my apartment, you know, unable to pay the rent. And here's this savior says to me, look, you can come and stay with me, but you're not going to need to do that because you'll be fine. You'll
Right.
be absolutely fine. So knowing that someone knows you well enough to say that and they've got your back, it's only through opening up that you can actually find that person to help you. And we absolutely need others to help us. We can't be by ourselves.
Yeah, that trusted network, isn't it, of people who can look sort of more coolly at the situation and go, yeah, you are in the wrong place, or that's not appropriate treatment, or whatever the situation is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really hope that other women lawyers in Japan have access to these kinds of networks, or are creating or making an effort to create these kind of networks that can support them.
And I think through myself doing mentoring for others, other lawyers, other women lawyers, that this is what I want them to know, that as a mentor, someone who's been through this, and if you're experiencing it, it's that kind of person who can help you. So just know that someone like me exists, but there'll be others too, because as I said before, I guarantee others have been through this. They just may not have openly talked about it,
Yeah.
but it's important that we see the whole spectrum of a person and that they have gone through lots of shards of glass to break through those ceilings, and that we can get there. But we're not an island. We do need others to help us.
Yeah, and maybe it's your time to receive help, and in the future you'll be able to turn around and help somebody else
Absolutely.
in their situation. So
Yeah.
not to worry too much about asking for help. I think that's another thing, isn't it? Like, I can't give anything back right now to you. You know, I'm just asking for help here. But actually one day you will. It may not be directly to the person. Maybe it will be. Who knows? Like, who knows what will happen in this world? So
Exactly.
definitely, yeah, don't let that stop you from asking for help, I think is huge,
Yeah.
huge thing, isn't it?
It's huge. And I mean, I can sit now and say, I am really thankful for what happened. I certainly wasn't then, but I can look back and think of that as the worst thing, one of the worst things that happened to me, shall we say, but
Yeah.
has really brought me a strength now to be able to be the person I am. So that is who you see now, as someone who's gone through that.
Yeah. That's
and
just
is
one
doing
example.
this podcast with a smile on her face. But if you'd
Yeah.
done it 10 years ago, whatever it was, it wasn't. And it's really taken until now to be able to speak up about it.
There you go. So that's really great to hear that we can overcome these things. We can become better, stronger from these adverse things. And yeah, why not ask for help while you're going through it? There's no need to do these things alone. That's for sure. So let's talk about seizing opportunities.
Oh, I love this topic.
So tell us your what is your phrase that you have that encapsulates your thoughts about seizing opportunities?
The door to opportunity is always marked push.
Mm.
I think every encounter you have is a corridor to your opportunity. There are few opportunities in life that are just automatic doors that open up for you. And so most doors need a push to show you the opportunity. And I think you may, if you don't do that, you find yourself standing outside, always waiting for someone to come and offer you something. And really, most of the things that come to you are an opportunity waiting behind a door. You just have to find your way to push it. Make up your mind to go to that door, push it open with an eager heart, eager mind. Perhaps you knock, but perhaps you don't knock. Sometimes the best opportunities are the ones that you don't knock and make your presence known. You just enter the door. Perhaps sometimes you get through the door and it's not the right opportunity, and so you rotate back out again.
You've learned something that was not right for me.
It wasn't right, and that does happen. It does happen a lot.
Yeah, we have a lot of fantasies about what would be great, and then when you actually try them, it's like, oh,
yeah,
as good as I thought it was. Okay, yeah.
And the strength in there too is to let that go. But if I think about not knocking, that's one thing, but knocking is also very important. And to do that, shall we say this word strategically, finding that handle, knowing what the handle looks like. Do you turn it left or right? What is the strategic approach, right? So you do actually have to be strategic. And that would be key to what I've done for my board position. So hello out there, I can be strategic, and I have taken a very strategic approach to that. The other thing would be to ignore the naysayers. I mean, classic, I've talked about a lot, is when I was starting my business, my law firm. Oh, why are you doing that? Why are you leaving a great corporate role? Well, the corporate role wasn't quite the role that I wanted to do. And so, finding that opportunity, sometimes you need to go through those obstacles of people who mean well, perhaps, but not always completely thinking about you, right?
Yeah, most people's advice
and often
comes from their own selves,
their own risk,
right?
their own risk level. Yeah. So I would say, if you don't approach doors and actually open them up, you're going to miss out. So they are always marked push. Hardly ever pull, actually, because that's sort of more passive to pull towards you. Pushing takes a lot more energy. And as I said too, not many things are automatic. So many things do not come to you on a plate. You do have to go after them. And how you approach that is really important.
Yeah, we have one in my family, which is kind of similar but different. It's take the road that is more interesting. So when you're trying to make a decision, am I going to stay here, or am I going to do this thing which is kind of scary and looks like a lot of hard work? Which is the road that's going to be more interesting, or which path is more interesting? Well, obviously, it's probably going to be the one that's hard, and you actually have to do something rather than stay in the status quo. And that's how we try to make decisions in our family when we come across something like that. Yeah.
And I mean, there might be several doors there too, Jane. You've got to decide between them, or maybe it's all three.
Exactly, right? It's not just A or B.
The promotion, the advancement, the board position, the extra education you want to do, going for that recognition, applying for the award. All of those things could be doors that open at the same time. But I like the way you've put that. I think that's a great motto for your family.
Yeah. Which way to the more interesting life? Yeah.
And it can be, as you've often talked about, A and B and C, and not necessarily A or B or C. That's really critical too, right? It could be more than one.
Yeah, so you mentioned your strategicness of your board positions, and people who are looking at you might be like, well, I could never do that. I could never be on a board. I'm just me. What do I know? I'm sure you probably felt like that at a certain point in your career, looked up at the people ahead of you and thought, I could never be like those people who have positions on a board. You are the statutory auditor and supervisory board member of Fujitsu, and pending the shareholder vote, also Toyota this coming summer. Amazing. Can we just stop and say how freaking amazing that is?
Thank you. I think actually that's one point of advice, is to stop and think about what you've done, where you've come so far, recognize it, not just for a few seconds, celebrate the period of time that it's taken and where you are. And I'd really say that to everybody as advice: stop and actually celebrate where you've come from, your hard-earned success.
So what would you say to those people who are like looking up at you and going, wow, of course Catherine can do that because she's so amazing and she has no challenges and she just does everything she wants to do. But me, little old me, I could never do that.
Well, I remember it was probably about 10 years ago, 9, 10, 11 years ago, and I was in a Women Lawyers on Boards panel meeting, and there were two people who were speaking. There were actually three, but two, I really summoned up the courage to attend that event and also sit in the second or third row and wrote down my question I wanted to ask them, and wrote it and read it at the opportune time, how to be a board member and how to go about finding one board position. And they closed down on me. They didn't give me any answers. They said, it's really about network and who you get introduced to, and you're really quite young, and I don't think that's something that you should be thinking about now. So, it's really people who have been in the job for a long time, and it's maybe there's a chance later. But they just really closed down, and no opportunity was given to, well, these are the things that we think you should do, and how about you try this?
Do that, yeah.
Right?
Or way to the board opportunities, no.
Right? And even now, these days, you'll hear people say, if they are offering to be a mentor, they'll say, well, get in touch with me and we'll talk about it and we'll help you. But there was no offer of help, and that closed down this big wall for me, and I thought it's insurmountable. There's no way, if two people who are amazing women leaders in the community don't offer it up, how am I ever going to find that way? And this whole point is, this whole pathway to being a board member is a black box and is quite heavily disguised under camouflage. You have to really look to find how to do it, but it is very well possible. I think too, a lot of people around me who did have board positions were coming from a finance background, were people who'd done M&A, mergers and acquisition deals, had been big lawyers and law firms, or had been other people who were big in the community. And I didn't think I was that big. I was what I would describe myself as a lowly lawyer working in a manufacturing company all my life, at the coalface, working in businesses that weren't so glamorous.
Yeah,
really.
Not glamorous, right? Manufacturing, factories, dirt, dust, literally wearing ugly uniforms.
I have the proof. Yes, I have the proof, and have received the laughs from others who saw me, lawyers who saw me in that uniform. But now I can say is that was absolutely where it was leading to, that was my niche or my niche that I was carving out for myself, that I didn't even really appreciate or know. And that for Fujitsu in particular, that was what they absolutely called out, is they wanted the person who had been at the coalface, who had been in manufacturing, who knew how things were made, who could be understanding around the board table, to know what they were talking about when they were talking about tech and different items and things that they were producing and concepts they were talking about, who had been a lawyer dealing with ethics and risk management and legal issues across the world in different industries, in different countries, shall we say. So the things that I'd been doing had all led to that position, I believe, in that was absolutely what they wanted. So from the Cinderella who lost her shoe going to the ball, I actually found out that I'd you got
invited
open
to
ticket
the ball
to the
of all
ball.
balls.
The ball of all balls. And that's also led to the next one. And there's many things I can tell you about at the right time, but when you meet the leader of that company and you talk face to face for a few hours about what you feel as a person, what you understand as a person, and what you can bring as a team member and a leader and a strategist to the table, that really brought it home to me that anything is possible. That someone like me, who's come from a small country, who's really just gone for it and been quite diligent and used her grit, if you can do all those things, no, it's not magical. There's no one way. It takes time, but you can actually absolutely do it. And I want everyone who's listening here today to know that it is possible. You got to find the way that you're going to be different and provide something that's of value to them, but also that you just show up as a real person. Who's not coming in with airs and graces and because you've worked XYZ, done XYZ, you are amazing. It's not about that. It's all about humbleness and integrity and showing your true self. And they will figure that out if you're the right one. And it's also about timing. Those things didn't come immediately. They took time, 2 years for that first one with Fujitsu and less time after that for the second. But once you get a role, they start cascading in. Let me tell you that. But
first one,
absolutely possible. And from that day when I sat in front of those people and they said to me, basically shoved me aside and didn't want to give away any secrets, I now try to help people do that, find the way into boards. They can come to me for mentoring and coaching how to do that. And also it's so incredible, Jane, that one of those people has recently approached me. One of those people who said no to me or turned me down, shut me down, has come back to me admiringly about my branding and what I'm doing in the market and wanting to emulate me. So I find that in that moment happening was just full circle as well. And I still sit in that moment and find it quite mind-blowing. That someone who wouldn't give help now is seeking out help from me.
Oh dear, goodness me. Wow, what a full circle moment indeed. Okay, so I'm gonna now give you this question that you ask all of your guests. Here we go. What I've learned in my career so far is, can we just say it in one sentence? Is that possible?
Well,
even?
I want to go back to that because opportunity is the thing. And I think the door to opportunity is always very well marked as push. And every encounter you have is there waiting for you to push the door open. So please do it. That's what led me to pushing the door to come to Japan in the first place to work here, pushing open the door to go and move to Panasonic. How on earth could I work for a brand name company like that? But I pushed it and it came through, and then the other things that have come through from there, they've all been about pushing. There's been an invitation along the way as well. But again, even if you're invited, it's not automatic and you've got to push in some way. So learning how to push and be able to do that is absolutely central. So that's what's helped me along my career so far. So though it's repetitive, it's really re-emphasizing the fact that you can do it if you push.
And some of those pushes are not huge things, are they? They can be even small things that creates a ripple that sends something back to you that you never imagined. I've certainly experienced that myself. So create some ripples. Go and push a few doors. Maybe they're just small ones, like little cat flaps or something. But and
if I think on the way to the Fujitsu position, there were a couple of other doors that opened up for me for positions that didn't come through as successful. But one was a thank goodness that never happened moment with a particular company. And the other was, a family run business, and they decided to hire someone from within the family to keep running the business and be a board member for that company. And that was fine too. But along the way, I had so many learnings from those two that didn't succeed that had I not said yes to the opportunity, I wouldn't have got that insight that then absolutely helped me for the successful positions I've got now.
Which are amazing, right? Yeah.
Push that door, everyone. Go for it.
Yeah, I wonder what's the next door going to be? Like, now you're obviously you got these two board positions, amazing. So now you're, where a lot of people would say like, oh, you're there, you're at the finish line.
I don't think you're really ever at the finish line. If you wish to be, I'm content with that, that's fine. But of course, obviously opening the door and making sure that those go well is top of mind for me, is to make sure that those are positions where I can be successful. And make sure
That's
that
another
I'm
thing, isn't it? Like
doing it
you've
right.
got the position.
Yeah,
That's not the end of it, right? Now you
no,
have to be successful in the
you have to
position.
be
So yeah.
successful, right, and be able to make changes, right? But in the way that you make changes, help Japanese companies in my context to be able to be better at their governance. And I put it the other day to somebody about being in a car with them, that I wasn't the driver of the car or the navigator. I was somebody in the back seat who was guiding them along as my board position. But I knew that several streets up the road that they could do a left turn and find a petrol station that they didn't know existed. So I knew that from my experience of driving
Right.
down that road before, where a certain thing was that was going to help them. Right. But I wasn't driving the car to that place or navigating the whole way. I was coming up with an idea that would
Right.
help them.
They weren't even letting you change the radio station, right? Yeah.
No.
But you
But
knew
I
there was
knew
something up ahead that would be helpful.
Yeah, or that there was a certain, part in the road that they should be careful about because I had heard the forecast that day and there was rubble on the road or something. I could tell them from my experience or what I had learned or what I knew. So that's really important. So those things I've got to show in the next years, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, that I can do that and prove my worth. So other opportunities have come up recently and I've opened the door, but they haven't felt like I'm going to do it. So I really feel when I open a door now, and many are being opened for me, or I am opening them to see what's behind there, but I've actually not had a feeling of, yes, I want to do that. So in recent times, I've actually turned down roles. And so that's the next learning for me, is being able to be discerning and say no to certain things.
Yeah.
Because at a point in time, which is now, when you've achieved a certain level, things start cascading, running into you, and a lot of people want you to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So being selective is probably my next challenge.
Yeah, so that, like, taking as many opportunities as you can is a great strategy to a certain point, right? And then it's not a great strategy anymore when you
you can get just so overworked, and everything that you're doing can be just exhausting. So you've just got to be really careful how much you say yes to after a certain point. And you generally tend to know, you can feel it. So it's more a feeling in my body that I know that I should be saying no. Not that I like the word should, but it's a thing you can feel that it's not a good timing. And actually saying no is very liberating as well.
Well, there you go. All righty. Well, I've definitely enjoyed hearing the things I haven't heard. I mean, I've heard a lot of the stories from Catherine over working with you for the last 2 years, almost daily on your show and various other activities that we get up to. So yeah, I've really enjoyed hearing more in depth about these things and some of those pivotal moments that in your career that helped you to be where you are today. It was not all plain sailing and bottles of champagne and all of that all the way. Goodness
No,
me.
that's right. It hasn't been. But I think if I was to repeat them, hard as they were, I would absolutely do them again, because they've brought me to where I am. So the good times and the bad times, I would repeat it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be working with you now. I wouldn't be doing all of this. I wouldn't be having the joy I have in life, having gone through what I have. And I've just told you a little bit. So I wanted people to know that there is that authentic part of me that is someone who's transformed from what happened, and that it hasn't defined me. I've allowed my own definition of those things to be brought up for me. I now own that greatness that's come from those days.
Well, thank you so much for your candidness today, Catherine. And I hope that if you're listening and you think, oh, wow, I would love to know more about this, or I'd love to work with Catherine, you'll find out how to do that. There's plenty of resources on her website, as well as ways you can get in touch for mentoring, etc., and take advantage of this amazing person who we have who's waiting to help you, right?
Thanks, Jane, so much. Yeah, I'm looking forward to people getting in touch, and any other questions, please ask.
Yeah, just ask.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's all we have for this week. Catherine will be back with the next episode. So we like to sign off with cheers, kampai, and bye for now.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of Lawyer on Air. I really hope that you were inspired by the story you heard and that you discovered something new about women in the law. Please subscribe to the show so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you can think of even just one person to share this episode with, that would make my day. I invite you to connect with me to talk more. Jump on over to LinkedIn or Instagram where you can find me, or send me a message via my website contact page. That's all from me today. I look forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Lawyer on Air. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now.